This is a map of the attack on La Boisselle on July the 1st, 1916. In the orange sector at the bottom of the map we have all the British troops. In the blue sector at the top of the map we have all the German troops. The white area in the middle is no man's land, in other words the gap between the two sides. So what was the objective that day? The objective for the British was to attack and take the town of La Boisselle. That sounds very straightforward, but La Boisselle was very important to the Germans, and the importance lay in the road which ran right the way through the town and behind the German lines. Because of that, the Germans had mounted a very strong defence on their side of the battlefield. Firstly, they positioned very experienced troops over here, troops that had already fought in battles earlier in the war. The experienced troops dug their trenches on all the high ground, and that gave them the advantage of being able to look down on the British troops at all times. On top of that, they built extra things called redoubts, which were reinforced bunkers, and they would oversee key areas. So what did the British have in reply? On this side of the battlefield you will see lots of rectangles. Those represent the British battalions. A battalion being approximately 1,000 soldiers. So we have on this side of the battlefield over 13,000 soldiers. However, there's a big difference between these soldiers and the Germans on the other side. All the British troops over here are volunteers. They're part of Kitchener's army, the PALS regiments, mainly recruited from the northern towns and cities. The idea was that people would fight better in battle with people that they knew. So what was the main plan of attack? The British decided to launch the largest military barrage of all time up until that moment in history. And the idea was for 7 days and 7 nights they would keep their artillery firing at the German front line in order to completely destroy the trenches and kill the frontline troops. As well as that, they planted 2 mines, one down the side of the town here and one over here at Lochnagar mine. This would be the largest mine blown at that moment in history. At 7:28 the 2 mines were blown. 2 minutes later, 7:30, the troops advanced across no man's land. The troops in Mash Valley set off down the hills. At first nothing happened. They got halfway down the hills, past the point of no return, when suddenly the machine gun fire from the German lines opened up. It completely destroyed the battalions in this area. They made no gain whatsoever. Between the Glory Hole and Lochnagar mine was a different story. The Lochnagar mine exploded and killed 300 frontline troops of the Germans, and that allowed the Tyneside Scottish and Irish in that area to take the first line through to the second line and onto the third line. However, by the time they got to the third line, they're losing soldiers and they're losing resources, so they started to drop back and they held the front line. The battalions attacking Sausage Valley, it was like Mission Impossible. This was 600 metres wide and all uphill. On the right hand side, the Royal Scots had advanced in the night and lay down in the battlefield. When they stood up at 7:30, they were hit with machine gun fire from all directions. Instead of heading straight up the valley towards Sausage Redoubt, they turned off to the right and ended over at Scots Redoubt. On the inside, the Grimsby Chums, the Lincolns, managed to take and hold Lochnagar Crater. The Suffolks behind them pushed through to the German front line, only to be met by flamethrowers. They then turned back and joined the Royal Scots over at Scots Redoubt. And finally, the 2 Tyneside battalions were going to be told to stay back because of the carnage that was happening in the battlefield. It was too late. They'd set off. They pushed all through Sausage Valley, through the front line, past Sausage Redoubt, and travelled further than any other battalions that day, 2.5 miles. So what happened by the end of the day? If the British plan had worked, the whole of the map should have turned orange. In actual fact, if we follow the pen here, the British managed to take this area here around the crater, and they managed to take Scots Redoubt on this side of the battlefield here. Everything else remained the same. The bare facts for the battle are as follows. On the worst day ever in British military history, this was the worst battlefield. It had the highest number of soldiers that were shot, 6,380. Of those, it had the highest number of soldiers killed, 2,267. And of the soldiers that died, it had the highest number of unknown soldiers, 1,927. For these soldiers, the battle was over, but the Battle of the Somme still had 4 months to go.